It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry. Hello, welcome back to another episode of It's Just Business. I am, of course, not Chris Larry. Chris is out. He had other stuff to do on the day we're recording it, but fortunately we have our super sub Alex here. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hey, Steve. Happy 100th episode.
I know. You see, Chris isn't here, and we have our big 100th episode anniversary, and he had to miss it. How is Washington, D.C., Alex?
Cold and a lot of snow this week, and I think it's going to snow today. We're getting one of those years where we actually get snow again. I like it.
Is it cold by your standards or cold by my standards?
Cold by your standards. By my standards, I'm fine, because, I got this big old thick head of hair these days from, thanks to COVID, I don't get a haircut very
You just
often.
leave and let it grow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's actually cold in Texas.
And it just goes out. It's a helmet.
Yeah, it is. I see. I'm looking at it. It kind of looks like this, big,
It's very pompadour-ish.
Yeah,
yes.
you sort of look like a white James Brown.
Little bit.
It's cold in Texas for us. It's frigid. It's in the 30s right now.
I think the whole country is in a bit of a cold snap, which, it's winter.
Well, we had a 130 car pileup in Fort Worth.
I saw that. The pictures of that thing are insane. It was a mile long, right?
I don't watch the news. I hate the news, and so I didn't.
Sure.
All I did is read about it. So I don't know. But the problem is, for those of you who are not in Texas, which is almost probably most of you, this is a warm weather state, and so what we don't have are an army of salt trucks. And so when the roads get icy, they just get icy. And if we really had a major blizzard or something, I would assume they could borrow from Oklahoma or something if they really had to. But that's why we have these problems in Texas. But there's also lots going on in the world of sports business. We're coming out of the post-Superbowl hangover,
yes,
of course. But there are various stories here to touch on, and so we're just going to dive right in. The first one that's probably most interesting to most of you who are listening is that there's more drama going on with the Washington Redskins / Washington football team cheerleader program. If you recall, last year the Washington Post reported a whole bunch of awful things going on in Washington's front office. A part of that was that various people, to include Larry Michael, in the Washington front office staff had been taking outtakes of cheerleader photo shoots, and they put them into a video that was an illicit video of a bunch of accidental
kind of a girls gone wild situation.
Yeah, it was accidental nudity. It was when they were changing
right,
and stuff like that. It was nothing that the cheerleaders ever consented to. So there's been a lawsuit about it. So Alex, why don't you tell us where we are with the lawsuit and what Washington has done?
So, yeah, the lawsuit has been settled out of court, which is the big story here. There are not a lot of details because, Steve, as you've often told me, when you settle, you do it so you can hide all the details. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. No admission of guilt, no admission of what even happened. But here's the thing. We all know there is a video. We know this because the Washington Post got a copy of the video. And, they reviewed it and said, here's what's in the video. They didn't, re-release it for obvious reasons. So, I think that this getting settled was probably the obvious, end result from the get-go. There was no way that Dan Snyder or the team could say, oh, we didn't know anything about this and it doesn't exist.
To not settle.
Yeah.
Even if, for a case like this, even if they had a valid defense, it's worse to litigate it. Because this is in court.
Then it gets out in the air.
Right.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah. And so, kind of tangential to that, we also know that the investigation that's been going on all year is finishing up. The Beth Wilkerson investigation.
Yeah. Now, Beth Wilkerson, as you recall, folks, was originally hired by Dan Snyder and then taken over by the NFL when the NFL realized that letting Dan Snyder investigate himself isn't exactly the road to redemption.
No, it's not a good PR move. It really is not. So now we know that Beth Wilkerson is, finishing up. The NFL put out some kind of cryptic thing just before the Super Bowl about this is going to be done and we'll see what she says. Nothing specific, but people read into it because it's like Dan Snyder's done making decisions about this, or something along those lines, which sounded
Listen,
like.
Let me tell you
Dan
guys
in
something.
trouble? Yeah, he's not going.
No, this investigation is going to reveal some minor problems that the NFL will handle internally, and it's not going to amount to anything. If Dan Snyder was going to go, it would have already happened by now. There's no way that Beth Wilkerson is going to uncover something that's going to become public. That's some startling, earth-shattering, revelation. The end result is going to be that they've made changes. The Washington's hired people like Julie Donaldson, who was on the Hogsty a week ago. Please go back and listen to that if you haven't.
Great interview we did there.
She was great. Yeah. But nothing is going to happen. So just get it out of your head. Now, the part of the cheerleader thing here, so we have the cheerleader lawsuit wrapping up, and what has happened is I can almost guarantee you that Washington has paid them some amount of money, and as a result of that, the lawsuit settled. Now
probably something with 6 zeros plus.
I mean, I don't know. We could only speculate.
Yeah, I'm just guessing.
Oh yeah, I 6 zeros. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
So the other part of this is whether the cheerleader program is going to continue, because the other news that came out this past week, meaning last week for those of you listening, was that Washington had paused their cheerleader program and actually has not hired a coordinator, like a game day cheerleader coordinator yet. I think, in my view, Alex, I think the cheerleader program should continue. I like having the cheerleaders. It's part of the team history. The earth isn't going to stop turning if they don't have cheerleaders, but I just like it as part of the team. So I hope that it continues from my perspective.
Well, okay, so we should say this is part of their whole plan to rename the team and rebrand. It's not necessarily about the lawsuit. They have kind of said they're pausing the cheerleader program. They're going to pause the band. They're going to pause everything, tangential to that experience until they have their new brand set up, and then they can, because they're not going to be called the First Ladies of Washington or the Redskinettes or whatever. Obviously, I don't even. They've changed the name like 5 times.
Well, yeah, there's
so they're going to have to come up with a new name, new mascots,
they'll have to
rebrand
all
that stuff.
They'll rebrand it in the team's image. I mean, there is
sure. Same with the band.
There's a bunch of there are some cheerleader trademarks out there that are dead. But right. the First Ladies of Washington could still exist. You couldn't have the Redskinettes.
And that I think got retired back in the 90s.
Well, I think that was the trademark, if I recall, that's dead. I think, as a matter of fact, Redskinettes. But I like the idea of having the program around. I think it's just part of the team history. As you know, I don't like erasing history just for no reason. So I like it. I know that we've been in contact with at least one cheerleader who's proud of what she did.
Sure. I think a lot of them are, because they do a lot of charity work, and that's, that is a good aspect of the cheerleader program, is the charity work and the active, in the, what do you call it? Activity with the fan base. I don't know exactly.
Well, yeah. So if people don't,
that's what it's all about.
It's community. They do community service activities.
Community. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember the word community for some reason.
And for those of you who don't know, I think probably a larger role with any cheerleader program is the community activities. So what they do is they go do. I've been involved in a couple of these things. They'll send them out there to go open a car wash, to go do, appear at like a community, at a, like a community center, like a charitable event, all sorts of things. They'll go meet and greets. They're an important part of the outreach between the football team and the community.
Yeah. And I'm fine with that. I've always kind of said, I don't really care about cheerleaders in pro sports. To me, cheerleaders are, it's a cute, childish distraction and, kind of a relic of the 80s. And, sure, you have your iconic groups, the Dallas cheerleaders, the Lakers cheerleaders. There's a handful of iconic cheerleader troops, but for the most part, I can take or leave that. But because they do the community thing, it's probably worth keeping, because that raising money for charity, all that stuff is a net good.
Well,
so,
yeah.
it's worth it for that in the
I
end.
think,
But I honestly, you could never show me the cheerleaders during a football game, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I think a part of Washington's problem is that they've now gained a reputation of being sexually harassing women, and so the idea of having scantily clad women on your sidelines is kind of a bad look.
The exact reason why I've always kind of been like, it's a little skeevy to have cheerleaders.
Well, I mean, I think I think the cheerleaders themselves would say it's wholesome.
Yeah, I know.
So I mean, it's not like they're the cheerleaders on the Replacement, from the movie Replacements, who were strippers. These are professional ladies who have jobs and all of that.
Most of them are professional dancers and not in the stripper sense.
Most of them are not professional dance. Most of them are just professionals who have other jobs and they do this on the side.
Okay.
Yeah, most of them are. Some of them are.
I meant they're professionally trained. It's not like.
Yeah, right. They're not. Don't ever.
They're not ballet dancers.
Oh no!
Don't get me wrong.
No, they're not that. They're not strippers. They're not anything. These are just regular people, and it actually ultimately costs them. They don't make any money at all in this. That actually costs them. If you add up whatever they're doing for physical fitness and beauty regimens and all that stuff, they probably lose money. So, anyways,
most of them, yeah. I mean, I've heard most of them do lose money. Like if they do the calendar shoots, I'm sure they get a nice stipend for that. But
yeah, so they get paid a very small pittance for game day stuff. Right. The NFL really.
By the way, they used to have to pay their own parking. Did you know that?
I didn't know that specifically, but that wouldn't have surprised me, knowing what I know about it. So, yeah, I mean, when you go on to Costa Rica on the calendar sheets and stuff, yeah, they get paid a little bit, but it's not Giselle money, at all. It's a complete pittance, and the NFL really ought to be ashamed about how much they pay them, because they're getting way more financial value out of this program. And NFL teams could find I don't know, pick a number, $25,000 a year to throw at these ladies, and it wouldn't make a difference at all to the budget. And they just don't, because they don't have to. Because they, if you've ever seen these reality shows where they do cheerleader tryouts, like it's been on, at least on the Dallas Cowboys and stuff.
You have 500 women show up and you're picking 20.
Right, and so they don't have to pay them, because they'll just, if you demand money, they'll just find some. It's a free market.
There's 480 other people who will do it.
Right. Right, because they're all trying to become the next Paula Abdul, who, if everybody recalls, was a Laker girl back a billion years ago when she was, 20, which is even before my time. But that's sort of the goal for at least some of them, so they don't have to pay them. But it's a bit disrespectful to just expect them to pay all this stuff out of the top of their head. So we'll see what happens with. I just with the rumor mill, for those who haven't seen it so far, is that the cheerleader program will probably continue in some form or another. Washington's cheerleaders have never been one of the more scantily clad and all of that.
No. I mean, well, if you look at some of those outfits they wore in the 60s, but every cheerleader group was like that.
Modern times.
Yeah. I'm talking like they dress like Pocahontas era. That was pretty scantily clad if you look at that.
Yeah, certainly. But I don't think any of them feel disrespected, about their outfit.
I'd hope not. The big thing is, if you pause it for a year and bring it back, hopefully you bring it back in a way that there's a better line of communication between whatever the management wants to do and what these women are comfortable with. Because that seems like that was what went really south.
Well, in terms of what the women are comfortable with, I suspect you could, considering there's millions of hours of porn online, we could find women who are comfortable with literally anything.
Well, okay, sure, but I'm talking more, remember like when this scandal broke and there was the weird, like, they made them all go on a boat with guys who were, prospective ad buyers and things like that.
Oh, well, yeah, and that was...
that kind of creepy stuff.
Yeah, so... that story in simplified form was at the Costa Rica photo shoot. The Redskins, then Redskins, front office guy who got fired asked them to escort rich season ticket holders to a nightclub in Costa Rica. Now, we had a cheerleader come to us and say it wasn't like that. She didn't want to go on the air at the end of it all, so I'm not going to say her name. But she disputed that it was quite that, just obviously like prostituting them out. She said that wasn't what happened. So who knows?
No, I'm talking about the one of the other stories that came. The first one where they told like 3 or 4 cheerleaders to go on somebody's yacht on the Potomac River for like a private party.
Yeah,
like there's weird stuff like that happens, and that's the kind of stuff that you have to say. Here's exactly what's happening. Are you comfortable doing this?
And I think part of it is that and part of the Washington Post allegations was that Dan Snyder said some weird things to a cheerleader, and
he asked one if he wanted to go up to a room with a client,
or like his friend, I think is what it was.
Well, his friend who was also a client.
Yeah, right, and that's weird. Now, where I have come across the cheerleaders is when you negotiate sponsorship agreements and things. A lot of times it'll have, they'll have like the cheerleaders need to make X number of appearances. At our sponsorship events. That's the kind of thing that are legit.
We need 2 cheerleaders to show up to every Papa John's opening or something like that.
Something like that, and they'll have player things. And what it'll say about players, it'll say we need X number of player appearances, and it'll say premium players only in these contracts, which means you can't send like Jeff Bidet out there and it's got to be like, at least Kelvin Harmon level.
Right.
Or
starter
Terry
or
McLaurin
better
level. Right. So anyway, I think that's the status of the cheerleaders. We don't know what we're going to see next year. Of course, if you listen to what Julie Donaldson told us, we don't even know what next year's going to look like, period.
Right.
That's one thing.
And I think that's fair. And, one thing, you touched on it at the beginning, with Julie there, with Jason Wright there, these people who are coming in now, they're taking a very modern approach to how they manage this team. And I mean that not in like a political progressive way necessarily. I'm talking just like they're open with us. I mean, we've talked to Julie. We talked with Jason Wright a few times. Not like we did with Julie. He's not coming on the show, but
we haven't asked. To be fair, I don't know if we.
To be fair, we have not asked, but I got to do that 2-hour sit down with him. We've communicated with him a few times. It's very like I could never imagine us doing that with Larry or Bruce or Vinny or any of those other guys.
So arrogant that he would never have stooped to ever talk to us in any capacity at all. He wouldn't even talk to the full-time mainstream media, much less us. Whereas we interviewed Julie, obviously. We have communicated with Jason. Alex got to participate in that thing with him. None of that, you got to understand, people, none of that happened.
And that doesn't even happen on most teams.
No.
No. They're taking it. They're like they went from probably back of the line to very front of the line of all sports teams in terms of how they communicate with people.
Yeah. So when Alex says that they are taking a modern approach, it's more of a fan-centric, community-centric type of approach than it ever was before.
Non-arrogant, I would also say, is big.
So let's move on.
Yes.
So obviously we had the Super Bowl here. A week ago, it was the Tampa Bay Tom Brady's versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Tom Brady's won. The ratings weren't good.
No.
Which I guess shouldn't surprise anybody because one, it was a bad game. It was
we didn't get a chance to talk since the game. You and I. That might be the worst game I've seen in 10 years.
I gotta be honest.
It was one of the most boring games.
Alex, in the second half, I pulled out my guitar and started playing guitar.
Oh, I was putting away dishes.
Yeah.
But by the time the halftime show came on, I was like literally just upstairs folding laundry, putting away dishes, and then I came back and I was like, oh, I'm midway through the third quarter.
Well,
oops.
I think the halftime show is worth a brief IJB interlude because if you go back I believe it was 2 years ago, the NFL hired Jay-Z to essentially be the executive producer of the halftime show. And so the idea was, I didn't think there was anything horribly wrong with the halftime show as it was, but the idea was he produces he's an insider, he's obviously a musician, he produces these whiz-bang halftime shows. Well, none of them have been any good.
No.
The weekend was horrible, I thought.
You know what's the weirdest thing? Jay-Z is known for what? He makes great headphones or most people think it. I think his headphones are crap, but that's Dre.
That's Dr. Dre.
Yes, sorry.
Jay-Z is a rapper who is married to Beyonce, who I don't think really makes music anymore.
But still, he's a musician.
Yes.
Why is it ever since he's taken over, the audio quality has gone to crap on all these shows? No one's balancing it properly. You can't hear the singer. You barely hear the music. Everything's too low.
Well, the idea that either of them have a live mic makes me doubtful.
That also means you shouldn't have any issues with how the audio sounds.
Yeah. So the point here is, I think, the point I was trying to make is that the weekend was terrible. It was boring. It's not my thing. I don't like his music.
The visuals were interesting, at least, but
it wasn't.
That's a different
even
thing.
If you like his music, which I don't, I thought it was just a boring halftime show. So that didn't hook people to stay.
Right.
And then you have a game that was just boring. Unless you're a Tom Brady sycophant, it was just boring.
It was an awful game.
Yeah. And so it doesn't surprise me. By the way, if you want to check out the story we got this from is from CNBC, actually, amazingly enough. Super Bowl posts worst viewer rating since 2007 by Jabari Young. This is dated. It doesn't have a date. But the rate, so this is the ratings. 96.4 million viewers. They didn't even crack 100 million. And that
first time in 14 years.
Yeah, that's the lowest since 2007. So all I was trying to say about the halftime show is that I don't think Jay-Z's done a damn thing to make the halftime show better at all.
He hasn't.
And I know the Shakira and J-Lo thing last year got a bunch of praise, but I thought it was terrible then too. The music was awful.
It got praised because guys like watching hot chicks shake their butt.
And because the feminist crowd thought the hot chicks shaking their butt was empowering. To me, it was just bad music. So
no, it's not that empowering, ladies.
It really was not. So anyway, point is the Super Bowl ratings are down. Now we've talked about ratings all year. The NFL ratings have been down a little bit, not nearly like basketball ratings have been just absolutely just demolished.
Well, everyone's ratings have been destroyed.
Yeah, but
in the last
it
year.
was basketball and baseball significantly worse in the NFL. The NFL was down a little bit, not a lot.
Although I always point to this. Golf somehow had like the worst ratings hit of any sport.
Well, that was we talked about that on the show, Alex. You might not have heard the segment. The reason for that is that the Masters is always in March or April, I think.
Right. They moved it to the winter or whatever.
Well, it was competing with the NFL on Sunday. So the Masters on a Sunday has no competition at all. Like that's really it's in a time slot where like the Sunday final round doesn't compete against anything. Instead, it was directly competing against NFL games. And I believe baseball still. So it's not surprising. It shouldn't be surprising to anybody. Okay.
But the point still being, everyone's ratings have taken a big hit of late. And I was reading another article when we were talking about doing this. Do you know what age group is the worst hit? It's the 18 to 34 group. It's not old folks. It's not people my age. I guess I'm now in that middle age.
Welcome.
But it's
group.
It's the Gen Z, Zoomers, whatever you want to call them, the young kids. They're the ones who aren't watching.
See, the ironic thing is that TV ratings really ought to be up because more people have been stuck at home all year, especially if you live in like a state that has a wacky, crazed governor like California, where Gavin Newsom's like, locking everybody in their houses for months on end. TV ratings should be up, but what this tells us is that the people you're talking about, these Gen Z? I think it's Gen Z.
Yeah.
But I hate generational labels, by the way. Alex knows this. I can't stand those.
Yeah.
But regardless, that demographic, part of it is that they are so connected to online entertainment that they just don't watch television.
Right. They don't have televisions. It's not even that they don't watch it. My brother is technically in that group. I mean, he's 5 years younger than me. He doesn't even own a TV. He doesn't have a house right now.
I have
but
2 kids both in that group. And they spend a lot more time on their phones and playing video games in their free time than they do.
The only reason they have TVs is for their video game consoles.
They have TVs because I bought them TVs.
Right. When they move out on their own, don't be surprised if they don't have a TV.
Other than the TV they already have, which they will take with them, no doubt.
Right.
But I think that's a good example. I wish we could take YouTube ratings and compare them to television ratings, because I suspect YouTube is absolutely just crushing TV ratings. Would be my guess.
I don't know about YouTube. They do some of that with Netflix and these online streaming services. You can find some data on what they're doing. And it's interesting you bring this up as, we talked about the Super Bowl, but the next thing we also wanted to talk about was the whole NFL's TV deals.
Yes.
Which are coming up.
Yeah. No.
And I thought, you mentioned online ratings. The biggest thing in that topic that you sent me that stood out to me is that ESPN Plus is trying to get the DirecTV package, and ESPN Plus online platform. How would that impact younger people is an interesting kind of question.
I've often wondered how ESPN Plus survives, because just as an anecdotal point, I know 0 people who are ESPN Plus subscribers. And actually, we do have Front Office Sports had a thing about this, and we talked about maybe doing this as a topic, but it wasn't enough topic to it. But if you look at Disney Plus saves company profits from going negative on Front Office Sports, this is dated February 11th by Owen Poindexter. What a name.
Right.
Sorry, Owen.
But you think he got beat up with that name?
I mean, really, seriously. If your last name is Poindexter, you got to at least have like a cool first name.
Right.
But anyway, the interesting point in this is that it mentions that ESPN Plus subscribers this past year doubled to 12.1 million.
That's a very small number when you're talking about online subscription.
Exactly. That's very, very, very small. And so it tells us that nobody is subscribing to ESPN Plus.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you have cable, like you have no reason to subscribe to ESPN Plus, you're thinking. I mean, technically you do if you want to watch, like, every, like, MAC football game or, like, all these small school football programs that they
Which I
don't put on TV.
Yeah.
But that would be the one, incentive.
Or if I want to watch, like, European cricket championships.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, a big part of their natural market is already watching ESPN conventionally. I think that it's going to be a slow build of, who starts subscribing. I haven't seen I'm not a cable guy. I cut the cord 2 years ago. I still haven't signed up for it. They need to tell me, what do you have that I would want to actually get? And getting something like the DirecTV package, that is a big incentive for people to finally sign up.
Okay, so let's just update where the NFL is with their media rights package. We've talked about this on the show before, and about some of the various companies that are that are competing for the broadcast rights. So this is another Front Office Sports story from this past week. Abigail Gentrup wrote this. The NFL is looking to finalize its
better name.
Yeah. She's not getting beat up for that, at least. The story is called "The NFL is looking to finalize its media rights by March," and the reason why March is important is they want to get it done before the schedule comes out, so everybody knows what game is being held by what network. So here's where we are. Fox and CBS looks like they're going to definitely keep Sunday afternoon games. NBC will hold a Sunday night football package. That was one that was up in contention, was the Sunday night package. Where ESPN comes in is the story mentions that ESPN Plus is being considered to take over DirecTV's Sunday ticket package, and then Disney is still in the mix to try to get a Super Bowl. And what Disney means by Disney is ABC.
ABC, ESPN. It would be what they do for the National Football Championship, where they put it on like 8 networks at once.
Yeah, I don't think that the NFL would ever be happy about ESPN being the sole or principal broadcaster of a Super Bowl.
No, I've said that with other sports. Like, the idea of having your championship on a cable-only
You're not going to get 100 million plus viewers like that.
Yeah. I think that kills basketball and hockey when they do that. I know baseball always puts at least the World Series on, a prime channel,
Yeah, right. So. It's got to be, right. So when we say Disney, what it really means is ABC, because Disney owns ABC.
Right. But like I said, they could do that cool thing where they'll put it on Disney or on ABC, on ESPN, and you have different announcers and things like that.
Yeah, alternative program. Like, I didn't watch it. I think Nickelodeon had playoff games. to try to attract
It was
younger
weird.
viewers. Was it? I didn't
I
watch
saw
it.
highlights of it, man. It looked weird.
I guess it's like pretty colors, and I saw like a brief clip of it.
Yeah,
it looked
exactly.
like pretty colors will attract 8-year-olds. I think is what the thought is. And the other part of this NFL package is the Thursday night package. Now Fox has it currently. That is still up in the air. Amazon is trying to bid for it to get the streaming rights, but the Thursday night package is still. That's one of the holdups for announcing all of this.
I would think it's more like who wants it.
Yeah, true. And I always end up
It's the one that it does the worst ratings every time.
The games are
right?
bad.
Yeah.
The problem is, like, you can stack the Monday night games pretty much, but
Right.
the NFL rules say that everybody has to take a turn at Thursday because it's just a competitive disadvantage to have to do that. And so what you end up is like games with like the Jaguars and the Jets on Thursday night.
Yeah. You wind up with these who are the worst two teams playing this week.
And not only are they the worst two teams, but they're unprepared because they didn't have time to practice.
Right.
So, yeah.
It does lead to a lot of shootouts, though, I've noticed.
Personally, I've always subscribed. I think the NFL is falling into the trap of, I didn't want to. I was about to use another analogy and it was going to be bad. They're about to flood the market with too much product. Okay, sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. I think the NFL needs to remember that what's great about it is building anticipation up until the weekend. If you have games on every single night, you kind of get tired of seeing it. Even for us who are like football fanatics, and we wouldn't be doing this website and this show for years if we weren't. At some point, you kind of get a little sick of it. And so I think the NFL would be wise to kind of hold back a little bit and not. I would dump the Thursday. Personally, I would dump the Thursday game completely. That would be my vote. And put that game on Sunday. I think it would be better. And it leaves a few days during the week where people can talk about it and kind of build excitement. So that would be me personally.
You said put it on Sunday. The thing that the NFL's never really embraced, and we only got to see it once as Washington fans, was when the team was playing in London and they had that early morning start for the game. I know this is normal out west because the West Coast they have the 4-hour time zone. I kind of wish there was a Sunday morning game. Maybe not starting at 9 a.m. like that did, but, it'd be nice, instead of a Thursday game, give us a morning game once in a while like that.
Well, having been someone who lived in the Pacific
West
time
Coast.
zone multiple times, it's a little different out there because these games are starting at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So your approach to football is a bit different when you live on the West Coast in the Pacific time zone. And so it was starting really, really early for them. The London game was starting like 6 a.m. or earlier.
Sure.
And
I
that's
get
probably
that.
too early. But the point is, Alex's, I think, point is you could jiggy around the start times to basically have football all day Sunday for everybody. And so I think that would be good and that would be reasonable. And I think that would be ultimately better for the NFL, if you ask me, than the Thursday game. But to summarize,
the Thursday games are sloppy.
yeah, it's terrible. Right. So to finish this broadcast right, so here are the numbers. According to the front office sports story, it looks like it's going to be $100 billion for 10 years or $98 billion for 7 or $96 billion for 8 years, depending on how it works out. So you're looking at $10 billion a year or more average annual value for this.
That's for all the packages together?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
that's the
because I was
total.
going to say, that seems like a lot for just like the day game.
Oh, no, that's adding everything up.
Okay.
And so this is a major, it's securing the NFL's future is what it's doing.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, if you're talking $10 billion and you divide that amongst 32 teams, that's more than they already have to pay their players.
It's a lot.
So,
It's not even a question. That's dramatically more. And the salary cap is set up to account for that.
right.
For those of you who don't realize this, the salary cap, how it works sort of generally is you add up all forms of income, of which some of the income doesn't count towards the salary cap, which is a point of dispute with the labor union. But and then a percentage of the income goes to the NFL, and a percentage of it has to be allocated to player payroll. So that's how the
Right,
salary
and
cap.
of course the TV contract is the big daddy of all that percentage.
Yes, and we've talked about that on It's Just Business many times. And for the NFL in particular, it's TV rights more than anything else. So if you have that much income, the salary cap's going to go up dramatically in the next several years. You're talking, I haven't done the math, but you're talking huge raises in salary cap. So the idea of like signing Dak Prescott to $40 million a year deal now may be irresponsible, but fast forward 5 years, that might be a bargain. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, I know we don't want to talk about the whole salary cap, but it is still supposed to go down this year because of the pandemic. I know that.
Well, yeah. So okay, but the NFL and the NFLPA reached an agreement months ago that the NFL salary cap would only go down to $175 million at the least for this coming season, because what they didn't want, obviously income tanked for everybody, all sports leagues in the NFL included. If they calculated the losses, the salary cap would basically devastate everybody's roster. So
it would be, you would probably be going back 20 years to like $100 million salary cap.
Yeah, I don't know about the number, but yeah, it'd be going down a lot. And so what they are going to do is offset those losses over the next few years. So, which will be offset themselves by a new media deal. So that's the point. And that's part of the reason why teams like the Saints are just in like an epic catastrophe level of salary cap.
Yeah.
The Saints,
you and I've talked about that a few times.
I went through, Alex, and added up. If they cut every player on their roster, because of the way the dead cap works, they wouldn't be under the salary cap.
It's insane.
Yeah,
I don't know what the Saints are going to do.
I read a story about that, about an agent trying to figure it out, and what he did is he went and renegotiated a bunch of deals. You can play with Drew Brees' retirement. If you play with when he retires and how he retires, you can save some, $20 million or so on that, and then you just have to cut a bunch of people. The Saints are in a world of hurt. And part of it is a huge part. They would be in a world of hurt no matter what, but they're going to be like $100 million over the salary cap if it goes all the way down. So anyway,
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story, but it's businessy, so I didn't mind bringing it up here.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's the NFL. So ratings were tanked on the Super Bowl for a variety of reasons. I think everybody thought they were probably not going to be great. But the fact that the game was a stinker, the halftime show didn't hook anybody really, so that contributed to making it even worse. So
and the commercials sucked, but no one ever cares about that.
As years go on, I've cared less and less about the commercials.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that to me, and I agree.
Well, part of it is also all these commercials are released on YouTube early. I don't know why anybody would do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
What kind of a marketing strategy is that? We're going to have...
Not a good one.
Yeah, I mean, what are you guys thinking? That's stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you want to build anticipation, not let it down.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's like marketing 101. You want to build anticipation. Everybody knows there's going to be, a commercial for your product, and yet you're going to make people watch it, let people watch it beforehand. It's just...
I mean, doing a thing, and I don't remember, the Will Ferrell one, and I'm not a big Will Ferrell guy, but... Like, they released, like, a 2-second clip of him just driving a car saying something weird.
That's a teaser. And it's like, that's fine.
A teaser like that builds. Releasing the whole thing does not.
No. Okay.
All right.
So let's move on.
Yes.
So there's MLB news.
Yay.
And it's not just that the Dodgers still haven't signed Justin Turner, although that's news, and it's greatly distressing to me that they're doing this. I don't understand it. But the news that we want to talk about is... the MLB has finally figured out the minor leagues. So
yes,
if you go back last summer, we did on this show, it was Chris and I don't think Alex was here, we talked about how Major League Baseball had completely demolished their minor league system. They didn't even play this year. A lot of teams got erased off the face of there. So Alex, tell us.
They fired almost everybody at one point.
So the MLB's finally figured out. Alex has the details. So Alex, tell us what is happening with minor league baseball.
Well, okay, so I don't think they've 100% confirmed if they're going to bring the minors back for 2021 based off the pandemic and stuff like that. But what they did do is they've set up their structure and this is something the MLB's been working on for a while, despite protests by the unions and stuff like that, where the minor leagues forever has been a whole bunch of very small teams. It was up to 162 teams 2 years ago before the pandemic. And some teams had multiple single A clubs, some teams had one or two. What the MLB has done is said, we're capping you at one AAA, one AA, and two single A, a high and a low. That's it. No more rookie ball, no more short season. There were all these weird little leagues.
There were fall ball teams.
Fall
and
ball.
For those of you who aren't baseball, my family's a baseball family. Fall ball is a thing.
Right.
And
right.
so that includes the major, professional leagues.
Right, and it's usually that's where you put your high school dropout kid that you signed.
Well, none of them are dropouts. But
but you know what I'm saying.
The high school, straight out of high school, 17-year-olds, right?
Yeah, and they play for 2 months, and that's about it in that league. And,
then that's because then they go to spring training after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of that's gone. So they're down to 120 teams, which means if you do the math, you think 42 teams were left out in the cold. It's actually 43 because the Sugarland Skeeters of the Atlantic League down in your neck of the woods, actually, they play in Houston. They were taken from an independent league and brought up to be, I believe, a AA team.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah,
because I have I don't watch local news at all. I actually hadn't seen that.
Yeah, well, but I mean, you've heard of the Skeeters because
I have definitely heard of the Skeeters. I didn't know that they had been bumped up to AA team because again, I don't watch the local news, and sue me, but I don't.
I think it's AA. If you look at the size of the Atlantic League and those teams and the stadiums, they're all AA size. They're all 6,000 seaters, and anyway, so that's part one of the restructuring, and basically the setup's not all too different from what it used to be.
Well,
You're going to have
every team the 30 NFL MLB teams each have 4 minor league teams. 30 times 4 is 120.
Exactly. That's the math there, and you're going to have AAA East West, AA Central North South. So it's not that different in terms of how they're aligning teams. They're getting rid of all the old names. It sounds like so you're not going to have the Can-Am League. You're not going to have, the old, what was the name of the one? The Pioneer Leagues and the Patriot Leagues.
There's a bunch of them.
And I know a lot of non-baseball fans probably don't care about that stuff, but what you probably don't realize is some of those leagues are older than MLB themselves. Some of these teams those 43 that are getting kicked out, they're older than most of the MLB. They're teams that were started in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Well, let me stop you right here. So understand, folks, that a lot of these teams that Alex is talking about weren't MLB owned, okay? They are under contract with Major League Baseball. And so what happened was Major League Baseball terminated the contracts last year with a lot of these teams. And when that happens, they could go on as an independent league, as an independent team, because there are independent professional baseball leagues and teams out there that play in the various
I just mentioned
markets.
the Atlantic League. That's
like Alex brought up the Sugarland Skeeters. They were totally independent.
Right.
I didn't know that they had been bumped up into the minor leagues.
So MLB is starting to take some of these independent teams and creating like a collective where you're still independent in that you don't get draft prospects coming in, but you're affiliated with the MLB and they kind of help each other out, and it's kind of loosey-goosey there. But the Atlantic Leagues can be like that. There's like 4 or 5 major independent leagues
they've reorganized and realigned the entire minor league system, and along with that, they have brought the management of the minor leagues directly into the Major League Baseball front office, which there was a whole separate minor league front office, for lack of a better term, that managed all these teams. That has been brought into the Major League Baseball front office. So here's what they've done. They've streamlined the process dramatically.
Right. Which it needed that.
Yeah, and
I understand.
And these teams did have way too many minor league teams. Alex is right. I mean, they had the fall ball teams. There were a bunch of many different rookie level teams.
Yeah.
If you notice,
high A, low A rookie.
well, it wasn't just high A and low A. There are a bunch of other
Right.
things too going
Right,
on,
right.
and so they're going to keep the high A, low A thing and eliminate all the other programs. And also, if you notice last year, Alex, the draft was dramatically. They went from like 30 rounds to like 7. And
Yeah.
don't quote me on the numbers, but it was something along those lines. And
It was a reasonable number of rounds, not the comical 30 rounds that they used to have, where, I mean, the idea that these scouts even know who they're picking, and I know scouts are scouts, but like rounds 25 on, like you're just picking a name off a sheet.
They did know, because what you don't know is there's a whole, like Baseball America knows who all these people are.
Sure, I understand that, but
there are, the whole select ball program out there is very organized.
But the GMs don't.
They
that's
do
my point.
know. They do know who they
You think
are.
the GMs know who those guys in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do. But what they also know is most of them aren't close to MLB level prospects.
No. And that I do know, because I know a guy who was selected late in one of those drafts years ago, and
he's not an MLB level prospect.
No, he was a reliever, and basically they just they give you like whatever the salary is, and when your arm falls off, you're done. That's it.
And so there's not really any need for like the Chicago Cubs to have people like that on their program.
Right.
So what they basically did is they just eliminated the teams that players like that played on. And so I would suspect that as the result of this, the draft may not be just 7 rounds or whatever it was last year, but it's not going to be 30.
It'll be 12, 15, something like that.
Yeah. Don't quote us on the numbers, but
no, we're just guessing.
Yeah, because it's for the tiny little towns that had these teams. It's a bummer, but I kind of understand it from a Major League Baseball perspective, because they did have way too much.
They did. So when you look at the teams that were left out, and it's actually very hard to find. I've spent a better part of yesterday trying to search who was in and who was out, and going through 162 teams and correlating that with the makeup that MLB put out. That took a while, but here's what I'll say: it's a lot of teams in the Northeast that were initially cut out, and these are the historic teams I was talking about, the ones from like Erie, upstate Pennsylvania, rural New York, western New York, Vermont. A lot of those teams were initially left out, and now they're being told by MLB to kind of form a new independent league. And there was the old Can-Am League, which was Canadian, American, upstate New York, and Canada and Pennsylvania, basically. So they're going to form like a 12-team league out of some of that. But what the places that are really getting left out are rural Appalachia, Tennessee, Carolinas, Kentucky, Southern Virginia, and Western Maryland and West Virginia, and then out in Montana on the West Coast. So if you're if you have a lot of money and you want to go start a baseball league, there's going to be a lot of stadiums available in those 2 regions. And some of them, I imagine, will try and form their own independent leagues. They just have to figure that out.
Yeah, at that point, it's just a marketing thing.
Yeah.
So that's what's happened with Major League Baseball. I think it remains to be seen, like I said, as to how many rounds will be left in the draft, but the result of this is going to be there's less.
And Congress is outraged. I should put that in. There's been a lot of talk in Congress about them being upset about all these small teams getting kicked out. Because, Congress is local in that sense.
I have nothing good to say about
Congress.
Any elected official, basically, but Congress in particular, totally worthless organization. So nothing they do is good for America. They're all about themselves. And so if they care about minor league baseball teams, it's only because they don't want to lose voters in their little
it's
districts.
an easy thing for them to say, oh, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I get that.
I think anybody who gets themselves elected to Congress is just lost their mind, I think, because congressmen are all about congressmen. So don't get me started.
I get that. I just thought I'd throw that in there, that there have been like a lot of congressmen who are like, I want my small 1,700 seat stadium to have a baseball team.
Yeah, as if you've even been to that stadium, dude.
Right, exactly.
Don't get me started on that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother topic.
Because I have a lot to say about that, believe me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes left, so we're going to cover one last thing real fast.
Okay.
So this is a very bad idea, people. There is something called I didn't. I'm opening the story here.
The fan-controlled football league.
Thank you. Fan-controlled football league. No, Johnny Manziel, the cokehead Johnny Manziel, the alleged.
Let's say former cokehead. He might be clean by now.
Maybe so. The alleged former cokehead, don't sue us, is involved in this, and a couple other names that you've heard, may have heard. And they've got some celebrity owners, like Marshawn Lynch is an owner in this thing. So the idea with this league here is that the fans control the play calling. It's basically live Madden football. The only thing that's going to happen to this is that it's going to fail. There is no way this is going to succeed, become a thing. If things like arena football that have real coaches and real players, and the XFL, which had real coaches and real players, fail, there is absolutely no chance whatsoever that something run by Marshawn Lynch and company is going to do anything but be a spectacular, nuclear holocaust level failure. Okay?
I mean, I look at this and I guess they're far enough along where I'll say they'll play a game or two, but this is one of those it'll last maybe a season type deals. I mean, Steve, I've got that weird obsession where I track a lot of minor league football.
Y'all just don't even know, and it's more than even he says on the air.
Yeah, it is. But for every 2 that come into existence, every 2 leagues, there's like 6 that never make it past, like, we designed a website. I could probably, if I thought about it, sit down and write down a bunch of names.
We've talked about one or two of those on this show before.
But the weird thing is, first off, this is arena football. I don't think we mentioned that because it's going to be indoor, 7-on-7. They're playing, all the teams are going to play in one city, which I hate that concept. That I know they're like, well, young people don't care about, city affiliation anymore for sports leagues. Yeah, but they like to go to games. People actually like to attend games. That's why you have teams in other cities.
Yeah, so, by the way, The Athletic has this story. Daniel Kaplan wrote this from the February 11th. Can fan-controlled football meld video games, real sports design?
And the answer is no.
No, the answer is no. Now, just for the record, the name of this really is fan-controlled football. This is called this league is the FCF. And it's going to be, you can track this down if you really want to watch this. It's going to be on something called VEN, Video Game Entertainment and News Network. And then Twitch. I think a lot of people have heard of Twitch.
Yeah, everyone's heard of Twitch, I think.
I've never spent 1 second on Twitch, but I have heard of it. VEN I've never heard of at all. And so I think when you start off on those levels, what they're doing here is they're trying to get that same like Gen Z group that are really obsessed with video games and Twitch and stuff, the young 18 to like 28-year-olds. That's their market, okay? It's going to be a spectacular failure. There's no way it works. I would bet my life on this.
The logistics alone are going to be terrible because, all right, so the idea is fans vote for what's the next play going to be. What's the next play call? I mean, you can't give them the whole playbook. That just doesn't work. So it's going to be run or pass, run or pass, run or pass. It's going to have to be simplified to something like that.
And all you Madden people out there who think football, I'm not saying Alex and I do. We couldn't do it either. Don't get me wrong, but y'all don't know what you're talking about, okay? You can maybe play a video game. That doesn't mean you can run a team in a real game.
No.
You can't.
Running a actual football team is so much about controlling personalities. It's about knowing who's hurt, who's not, who's tired, who's not. Who's available?
The X's and O's of the games, and
here's my defense of the Madden side can teach you some basics about X's and O's very well these days. You can draw, you have playbooks with 300, 400 plays. I get that, but that's not how this FCF thing will work.
No, there's going to be some online way where people are voting.
But it's going to be very basic voting. Would be my imagination.
I would assume
you can't. With the amount of time you have to call a play, realistically, you're not going to be like, pick a formation, pick a pass play, a run play, short,
deep,
medium.
There's just not time for that to have people vote on. And again, people don't know what they're talking about either. Right. So, it would be a spectacular. It would be a spectacular. I almost want
to watch it just to see it fail.
So here's some names. I'm not going to read all of these, but there are some names. So there's one team called the Beasts. That's Marshawn Lynch's team. some WNBA player Renee Montgomery I've never heard of, pro wrestler Miro. Who knows? I don't know who either one of those people are. There's the Glacier Boys with a Z.
Oh, that's always good for a
that's
sports team.
Right. Somebody named Quavo, who apparently is a hip-hop musician. Richard Sherman, who is the former NFL player. And then a YouTuber who I've never heard of named Destroying. And then there's the Wild Aces, who's owned by Austin Eckler. Anybody know who Austin Eckler is?
That name's familiar.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar. I couldn't tell you who he is. Greg Miller of Kinda Funny. And then there's the Zappers, who New York Mets pitcher Trevor May is involved with, and somebody named Ronnie Singh, who, no idea. So there's only 4 teams. That's 3 teams. No, that's 4 teams. So there's only 4 teams in this. The Beast.
Oh, Eckler's backup running back for the Chargers.
Okay, I knew we'd heard that name somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's who's involved in this. So we brought it up almost more as a joke than as a serious story because there's no way this lasts.
No.
It's going to be awful.
I mean, and you know me, I want minor league football teams to work. I'm going to actively root against this because it's just such a stupid idea.
It's stupid. It's ridiculous. There's a place for some sort of alternative football in this world. Nobody's really figured it out yet. They're doing it all wrong. The people who own it are dumb. But
the XFL kind of had it going for a while, or not XFL, AFL, or Arena Football, because they lasted 30 years.
Various
altogether.
Different forms. They kept reconstituting themselves. But if anybody could ever get their act together, it could maybe work. Who knows? But this is not it. So that's it. I don't want to spend any more time on this. We just thought it was kind of funny that this is another one out there. So this is the end of our 100th episode. Thanks everybody for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks with another show. Please check out. Obviously, the Hog's Thigh has moved into its off-season mode. Alex and I will be back in like an hour to do that show. Seasons of Discontent, which is Rick Snyder's look at all things Washington, D.C. sports and life, is on hiatus until March. So that's out. But then check out all of our regular written content that we put out every day. With that, see you guys later. That's it. Bye.